Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna be reacting to.
Is life better in Europe or USA? An honest review after 1 year as an American in Europe.
The first time I visited Europe, I had no idea what to expect. Well, that's kind of a lie. I did have some semblance of an expectation for what Europe would be like. You see, growing up, I had been led to believe, I had been conditioned to believe that the United States of America was unequivocally the greatest country on earth, and every other country was vying for second place. And every European country was no exception to that rule. So when I booked my flight from LAX, Los Angeles, to Valencia, Spain, a city that I had never even heard of prior to my girlfriend moving there, I fully expected Valencia to be a drastic downgrade from LA and the rest of the US as a whole.
Oh, I feel like there's many places better than LA.
Yeah, LA, this doesn't sound too attractive.
Yeah.
And then I actually landed. And when I landed in Valencia, it was
But I think, from maybe European perspective, they don't really see the true LA. They see like the TV movies LA.
Yeah.
That LA looks nice, but that's not the real LA.
nighttime, so I couldn't really see much of the city from the plane. But as soon as I got in the taxi and started heading over to Senator Park Central Hotel, I knew immediately that everything that I had been taught to believe about other countries was completely and utterly wrong. Some of the first few things I noticed being in Valencia were, first of all, the infrastructure. The infrastructure immediately stood out to me. I remember being in that taxi, and again, it's nighttime, so I can't see very much, but being in that taxi, taking that probably 20 ish to maybe 30-minute drive to the hotel, and not feeling any potholes along the way. And I remember thinking, wow, that's pretty interesting because there is nowhere that I've been to in the US that is devoid of potholes. So I'm thinking, okay,
You know, in Lithuania, we used to have a saying that in America, you can drive, smoke a cigarette, and, like, what do you call it? When you smoke the cigarette, what's left after?
The bud,
No, but like as it smokes.
the smoke,
No,
the
part of
ash.
the I guess, yeah, the ash. I guess, yeah. You can smoke a cigarette and the ash won't drop because the rows are so like straight. Not like straight, but so even.
Mhm.
That was the saying.
Uh,
What's so funny to you? I'm trying to tell you a fucking story.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm saying that was the perception of roads in America.
Oh.
That
What does that mean?
because the roads are so even, like they're flat. There's no potholes, no nothing
Mm-hmm.
here in America. Which I mean, honestly, the roads are pretty good though. I don't compare. I'm not saying your Lithuanian roads used to be bad. I'm sure now they're better. Uh, can't speak much for Spain roads or other countries, but American roads are bad. I don't know. Potholes,
For
not
for me, is what gets me is the speed bumps.
right, but that's safety though. That's not.
Yeah.
It's annoying, but it's for people to not speed. Aside from like potholes, I don't know. I guess maybe in LA there's potholes a problem, but he said he's never been in any place.
I've seen up
I don't
north
know.
they have an issue because the trucks they have to pass through that there's like what do you call it, the floor collapse, or there's like a house and you have like a hole like James Charles.
Sinkhole?
Yes, sinkholes.
Oh well,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes,
Well,
yes.
sinkholes is different. That's a natural disaster. No, just potholes in a sense like it's poor quality roads.
Mm.
I don't think that here in Miami, maybe because they're like non-stop working on the fucking roads. Like, not kidding, guys. There's always road construction. It never ends. So
I feel like if there's a pothole it gets filled.
yeah, like I don't. The only issue you can tell like on older roads because the trucks are so heavy, the road is kind of like there's like
Mm.
the two
Yeah.
where the road's tires go. That's kind of like the like a paved. What do you call it? Like a way, I guess, where to go. So in all the roads that is, but the straight up potholes, like a hole in the middle of the road, I I don't know. I'm
Mm.
sure I have seen it here in the 15 years, but it's not recently.
I can only think of like one street that has one, but they filled it in.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize that was a problem.
okay, Spain, or at least this place, this stretch of road in this particular city in Europe, doesn't seem to have any potholes. That's interesting. And I also noticed that the lines in the road were more clear. And the next day I woke up and I walked outside and I realized, wow, all of the infrastructure is better. They have dedicated bike lanes. They have this whole bike share system in that particular city. The buildings seem like they're more well maintained. And just
What
all of
part of Spain is Valencia located?
I want to say in the southern part.
In the south? Okay.
Yeah.
infrastructure
I think Alicante is in Valencia region.
in
Oh.
general, even down to the parks, they all looked better than what I was accustomed to seeing in the US. And not only that, but the urban planning was better. You see, there's no point in having bike lanes if they don't actually take you anywhere. In the US, in a lot of cities,
Not that, it's also if people don't use it. To have bike lanes, people have to use it too, right?
Mm.
especially the city that I grew up in, the DFW area, you can put bike
Where?
lanes there.
Dallas Fort Worth.
Oh.
So he's not from LA, he's from Dallas, I guess. Okay.
But because everything is so spread out, you can't really get anywhere with those bike lanes. So I remember being utterly surprised by the urban planning there. And this was before I found out about not just bikes and the automotive companies lobbying the politicians to implement zoning laws to prevent this more dense urban environment that's bikeable and walkable and accessible by public transit. But we'll talk more about that later. I also noticed that the safety was on a different level. I remember, again, it was nighttime when I arrived, and my girlfriend was walking to meet me at the hotel, and I was absolutely petrified because back home, especially in a place like LA, you don't walk alone as a woman at night like that. You just
I'm so confused. So is he from Dallas or from LA? I guess maybe he moved from
Maybe
Dallas to
you
LA.
can speak on both.
don't do that. It's not in your best interest. But as the days went on, with my girlfriend and I being in Valencia, I found that we could walk around safely at night, and it was never really an issue. I never felt unsafe, in part because there were always more people there, but also because I knew that the threat of gun violence or violence in
For
general
me, I just wouldn't walk by myself, period, because I need a witness.
I don't know. Again, can't speak for Spain, but in Lithuania, I didn't feel safe walking at night. I don't know.
There's no reason to walk at night.
Not the most. I mean, if you have to walk, you have to walk.
To
But
walk
it was
where?
never.
At
Well,
night.
okay. Let's get shit straight. At night is 5 p.m. Okay. In winter, 5 p.m. is night.
Oh.
So you sometimes your after school activities finish at 5 and you have to walk home.
Oh,
Okay. And it's 5 p.m. So it's not technically night, but it's night. Okay.
Mhm,
So
I see.
I wouldn't
Okay.
say like it was never a comfortable experience walking. And I mean, you walk, yeah, you have to, but you're always on alert because someone gonna run up on you. At least that was I was always on alert.
Mm,
So that's just me though.
mm.
was exceedingly slim. And again, as the days went on, that became more and more apparent to me. And not only that, but all of this that I just mentioned came at a lower cost of living. So not only was it a better place to be, but also it offered a lower cost of living. And mind you, I was coming from LA, so LA is obviously an extreme example, but it was a lower cost of living than anywhere that I had personally been to in the US. It was a low cost of living and a high quality of life. And of course, for people who live there, the jobs pay less. But for me, I make my money doing this. So I'm going to make the same amount of money regardless of where I am. So as a digital nomad, I knew, wow, I might have been asleep on all of these other areas because if this is just this one city that I had never even heard of and it's this nice, what about all of these other places? And I took that question with me as I got back on the plane and headed back to the US via Zurich, Switzerland, which, even though I only spent 1 day in Zurich, also proved to be very, very nice. And it sort of
It is nice, but it's mad expensive.
incorporated an element of wealth that I felt like Valencia didn't really emphasize that much. And that was one thing that I was a bit concerned about with being in Europe and the collectivist mentality, which I'll also touch on later on in this video. But I was concerned that wealth was less attainable and also you just couldn't find environments that felt wealthy, that emanated wealth, like you could in LA or New York or Dallas or any other large American city. But when I went to Zurich, I was only there for around 22 hours. That fear instantly dissipated. I didn't even have to leave the airport to feel the wealth just literally radiating from all of the walls. And if you've been to Zurich, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It just emanates wealth, but also everything else that I mentioned about Valencia applied to Zurich as well. It had better infrastructure. Okay, the roads were pristine, the public transit was pristine, top notch, the urban planning was immaculate, and the safety was off the charts. In fact, I think Zurich is statistically one of the safest cities in the whole entire world. The cost of living wasn't exactly very low, but it didn't seem any higher than what I was accustomed to in the US. So when I landed,
That's fair. I think, Zurich and LA could probably be a similar cost because Zurich is expensive as fuck for Europe, but LA is expensive as fuck for America too.
I
So
want to hear numbers.
yeah, I'd
What
like
is
to see
them?
some numbers too, but that's a fair point. I do think if you come from LA and you're making LA money, Zurich shouldn't be too bad for you. Like you would get way better quality of everything, but for about the same price. So
landed back in LAX. I arrived in LA after being in Europe for 2 weeks. I thought that I had experienced culture shock when I arrived in Spain, but the reverse culture shock of going back to the US was 10 times as strong as the initial culture shock that I experienced by going to Europe. Because I remember the first thing that stuck out to me, just being on the plane, having the window seat, and just looking outside, was seeing how spread out everything was. And when I saw that, I instantly knew the urban planning in LA is never going to be as good as it is in Valencia or Zurich. It's never going to be as good because, again, you can add in bike lanes, you can add in public transit, but ultimately, the city itself is just structured in an inefficient way. And it's so built up already that there's nothing you can really do to alleviate that issue within my lifetime. Maybe my grandchildren's lifetimes, but I won't be here to experience that. So I instantly knew, at least in terms of urban planning.
With Asana, AI teammates are here to help keep work
that's
on track.
interesting point that the city is made inefficiently. How would have you made it more efficient though? Like, because LA, the thing about LA is very spread out. It's not built up, it's built out. I feel like take any city in Europe too, if you start spreading it out because more people are flocking there, it would have the same problem. Unless maybe you use like build everything in as you build. Like, so like you add bus routes as you go, and stuff like that to kind of keep up the same efficiency. It's an interesting point. I don't know, because the inefficiency comes from the fact that everything is far away from one another because city's huge. So one of the two things, either deal with it or like try to live within that local neighborhood, like how there is a Beverly Hills, for example. Just like try do everything only in Beverly Hills. Don't go from Beverly Hills to the Valley or Compton. I don't know. That's because if you consider LA as a whole thing, fucking LA is like
It's big.
it's it's the size of like half of Lithuania probably. If so it's like it's not really like a fair comparison to a small European city to like a huge ass American city like that.
The US is cooked. And again, this is before I found not just
But he is right though. I don't think it's possible to fix it because it would take so much effort, like so much to add bus routes, and it's not even adding bus routes. It's to make sense to add bus routes. You have to change the people's mentality to use that public transport too, which I don't think it's attainable. I just don't think it's attainable.
I think it also has to do with the mindset because if you want to comp, like for example, Zurich, where he was living in that area that he found useful, you have to take that and then put that into LA. So you say you want to live within these bounds and you're okay with that. I think because you see that there's more to explore and you're still in one area, you're gonna try to make use or try to figure out how I can utilize to get more resources out of those, get more out of those resources. Whereas if you're in Zurich and you want to go out the bounds of Zurich, okay, you plan in your head, okay, I'm going to have to travel or have to figure out accommodations to achieve more of that more of the radius, more of the area, surface area to cover because you have that in your mind. But because LA is so huge, you think that you can approach it the same way you can approach Zurich, where Zurich everything is probably more centralized and everything
Yeah.
for that area. So I think it's more has to do with the mindset of how people see things.
Yeah, because like to go like let's say 100 kilometers from one part to LA, you can go 100 kilometers up. And I mean, I don't live in LA, I don't know, but it's a possibility you still might be in LA. Whereas in Zurich, again, I don't know, I don't live, but I would think from one end of Zurich to the other is less than 100 kilometers. Like LA is just a very long city. the way it's built, it's just built out because it more
Cause,
people flocked and flocked and flocked, and you started adding out and out, and that's how it's built. So it's
Because I think it's easier to digest a small plate. Now, when you look at LA, it's a big plate, and if you think you can accomplish all that, you're biting more than what you can chew.
yeah, like take a look at Miami, for example. It's not as bad as LA is, but from up in Miami-Dade County, which is like what, Aventura, right? I think, to all the way south to Homestead, that's like 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
And that's like 2-hour drive, not in a busy day. Like that's if the roads are clear, 2-hour drive. So like that's just how the city is spread because of how it's built.
But I do think they also take into account, like in that area, in that location, they have like all that you need, a grocery store, your fitness center,
Where, like in Homestead, for example, or
like in general, in any place. Like for example, in Miami, which is maybe, I don't know if it's bigger than Zurich.
Miami?
Yeah.
What, Miami downtown or Miami as a city?
In general, so I'm
Pretty.
trying to
Oh,
grasp size.
and we can look up Zurich's
Or I can
population.
do like in LA, like he's saying from Zurich to LA, like in Zurich, in
It's
LA.
hard to talk about LA because we don't really know.
Yeah, because of how I'm thinking is that, yeah, we're spread, it can be spread out, but I think you get everything that you need because those companies, they make sure they pick a location where, okay, there's a McDonald's here, there's a grocery store there, a fitness center there, a school here, but maybe you don't want to go to the one in your area because you're dissatisfied with that area, but you pay in accordance to the area you can afford. So if you're seeking for more, you either have to go and get more funds to go into a more desirable area with the better resources.
Yeah, so Zurich's population is over 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's
That's little.
2.8 million.
Yeah.
That just shows you the size. Like one,
That's easy to digest.
it's like,
No. Mhm.
hold up, let me see.
That's not a good comparison then.
Let me see
To do a
Homestead.
video to save life is, of course, if everything you need is gonna be in that small area.
Yeah, because like if we take one,
Mm-mm.
because Miami is like a combination of a lot of cities, like a lot of cities. So North Miami, Homestead, Aventura, each is like a city. So if you take each of that city, I would say each of that city is walkable, and you kind of have everything in that little
Yeah.
city. The problem is when you say
Humans.
Miami,
Yeah.
Miami, you consider the whole thing is
Yeah.
Miami because it is still technically Miami,
Mhm.
but
And-
when you say Zurich, you don't think
Yeah.
Zurich plus the neighborhood
Mm.
cities around Zurich. You just think just Zurich, like in Vilnius. You don't consider like Trakai to be part of Vilnius. It's Vilnius is just Vilnius, you know. So it's like, as I said in one of the videos, from in Vilnius, you could probably walk like 3 hours from one end to the other. I mean, 3 hours you wouldn't walk
Yeah.
for a quarter of the city. You wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
walk.
and I
So
think
it's
humans naturally, they want to go to the better option. If they can think it's within their bounds, they will do so, but over calculate that, oh my God, this is gonna take me some time to get there. Well, of course, it's different when you're in Zurich because in Zurich you can accomplish this in one day.
I guess the whole point of this long rant is the smaller the city, the
It's
easier
easier.
is it to manage it.
Yeah.
and realized that this was by intention. Basically, the reason why American cities,
To
especially
me,
in
I'd
the
be
South
impressed
and the
if
West,
you
tend
picked
to
another large European country
I
that you can comp.
I think maybe London is comparable to like one of the American cities. London, Paris, Zurich is just not a big city.
be so spread out is because these cities were built after the invention of the car. And listen, I'm not one of those people who is completely averse to cars. I like cars. And honestly, as a car guy, I feel like Europe provides a better driving experience than the US because, again, the infrastructure, the roads are better. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Aside from realizing that the urban planning would never be as good in LA as it was in Valencia, which in many ways, when you consider the palm trees and the weather and the beach, Valencia felt like an alternate reality version of LA. So arriving back in LA was very strange for me psychologically because it almost felt like I was stepping into a dystopian version of Valencia, Spain, where not only was the urban planning just a complete afterthought, but also because of the very high cost of living and the overall individualist, every man for himself mentality that I will touch on here in a second, the homelessness was just out of control. And it was only then that I realized, being in Valencia, I had only seen maybe 3 or 4 homeless people in those 2 weeks. On the bus ride back from LAX to Van Nuys, which is in the north part of LA, there's maybe an hour of a bus ride. I saw more homeless encampments than I saw in my 2 weeks in Valencia. And I don't think I saw any homeless people in Switzerland. So imagine in 1 hour, I've already seen probably 10 or 20 times as many homeless people because I'm seeing whole encampments on the side of the road with tents just set up everywhere than I did in Europe. And it's not like I was just in one area in Valencia. I was going around with the bicycle. I was exploring. So
No, homelessness is not a problem like that in Europe for sure. That is a very much American problem.
that really blew my mind coming back. But then, to cap it all off, the cost of living was just astronomically high. I remember going grocery shopping for the first time. I went to Target, and the amount of money that I spent to get myself canned food, tortillas, granola, peanut butter, and bread, and maybe bananas or something like that. The amount of money that I spent on that, so basically a step up from prison food, was more than I had spent to get myself and my girlfriend groceries. And I was getting us healthy foods. I was getting us salads, fresh fruit, green juices, things of that nature. And I was spending less money for both of us. So I realized pretty quickly that, hey, maybe the US is not all it's cracked up to be. And I didn't know it in that moment, but I subconsciously made a decision that I was going to move to Europe. Now, a big part of the reason why this was because my girlfriend was born and raised in Europe and lived in Europe. And I just felt like we would have a better quality of life being in Europe together than in the US together. So when my girlfriend returned to her home country of the Netherlands from Valencia, Spain, after being there for, I think it was 5 months for her internship, we started creating somewhat of a plan to get me to the Netherlands. Now, the plan was very rudimentary at the time, but just from our preliminary research, we realized very quickly that there was a direct path for me specifically to go to the Netherlands, which is where I'm filming this video right now, and that was through the DAFT visa, the Dutch American Friendship Treaty visa. Basically, this visa is for American entrepreneurs who are looking to set up shop in the Netherlands. And I said, okay, I'm going to take that visa, I'm going to use that visa because I'm already an entrepreneur anyways, and I am going to move to the Netherlands. So my girlfriend came and visited me in the US, in Texas. By this point, I had returned from LA to Texas. She visited me for around 6 weeks, and literally the day that she left, I booked my flight to the Netherlands. I booked a one-way flight. And I spent the rest of 2023 stacking up as much money as possible to sort of cushion my fall as I landed in this new, unfamiliar country because I had never visited the Netherlands. I had never previously
That's a
visited
big
the
deal.
Netherlands. All I knew about the Netherlands was what she told me about it and what I saw other people say about it online. So people like Not Just Bikes, for example, because when I arrived back in the US, I was curious to see why the urban planning was the way it was. And what I realized from watching Not Just Bikes amongst other people was that, again, the
That was this
automotive
is a
companies,
new video or it's an old video?
It's New Year, like yesterday or something.
Oh, so you still in the Netherlands?
I think so. Yeah, 2 days ago, yeah.
Okay.
It's new.
had essentially lobbied politicians to pass legislation that prevented mixed use zoning. So in Europe, the way that things are structured, you're always within walking or biking distance of
Ah, the mixed use zoning, that's a good. We've seen this somewhere in one of the videos. I forgot about it. That's what about European cities that there's mixed use zoning inside the city. Here it's either shopping or residential or warehouses. Like there you can have like in Europe, for example, there's a apartment building and downstairs is a grocery store. So you don't even have to leave your apartment building to go to here. I
There's some areas in
in Brickell, in Brickell I have seen that, but outside of Brickell I have not seen that. You won't really find it's either US residential or it's commercial, or I guess industrial is separate too, but industrial is typically away from those two.
of the things that you need. Something like a food desert is pretty much non-existent out here, at least as far as I have seen, especially here in the Netherlands. I have never seen a scenario where you are far removed from all of your basic necessities. I am in a very small Dutch town, a town of about 12,000 people, and I have no
Oh, the
problem
size of
with
Priam, eh?
biking to the gym, to the grocery store, multiple grocery stores, pharmacy, anything else that I might need. I can get there very, very rapidly within about a 5 to 10 minute bike ride. And that's being in this small Dutch town. Whereas back home in LA or in Dallas, these are very big cities with over 1 million people each. And you can't really bike to these kinds of places because the infrastructure just doesn't exist and the layout is not conducive to that infrastructure, even if people decided to build it. So,
In 5 minutes, we could bike to the grocery store. I don't know about. I feel like most of Miami there would be a grocery store within 5 minute bike ride.
Mm.
Where would it, I'm trying to think where there wouldn't be one.
You have to go over the bridge, and the bridge is up.
Okay, yeah, if you have to right, but if aside from, I feel like it's kind of
People in Sunny House, they have to go across the bridge to go to a Costco.
well, yeah, but that's being
But they
picky.
have,
If we talk
yeah.
about just a grocery store, Corner store is a grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like
Oh, there's one everywhere.
I think so too. I think within 5 minute
I don't
bike
think we
ride.
live in the desert.
Yeah, I don't think
Food
we
desert.
live in a food desert.
again, now I'm hip to the fact that, hey, we're basically being scammed. We're living in the shadow of corruption. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like the feeling of having to make car payments simply because of corruption. So, again, I booked my flight to the Netherlands. This was around August of 2023. And I booked the flight for January 2024. I spent the rest of the year stacking up my money, got around maybe 15,000, 18,000, something like that saved up. And I flew one way to the Netherlands. And I remember being on the plane in the window seat once again. And as we were descending into Schiphol, I don't know if I said that correctly, but the airport in Amsterdam, the first thing I noticed was, wow, from up here at least, the infrastructure looks even better than it did in Spain. And maybe even better than it did in Switzerland. Maybe. Big, big, big maybe on that. But once my girlfriend's family picked me up from the airport and we started driving from Amsterdam to where they lived in Noord Brabant, which was around an hour, maybe an hour and a half away, I realized, wow, the roads here are even nicer than they were in Spain. And basically, everything is kind of a step up, just infrastructure wise, compared to Spain. Because the Netherlands is kind of a more developed or advanced country. Not saying it's better, it's just more developed and more advanced. So I was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And as the months went on, what I realized was the Netherlands provides an unequivocally better lifestyle than the US. I had it backwards growing up, and many Americans have it backwards as well. A lot of Americans, most Americans, can't even point the Netherlands out on a map. And yet, this country, this small country, provides a much better quality of life than the US. And really, Spain and Switzerland both did as well. And I've also been to Belgium and London, albeit very briefly. We visited Antwerp and London for about a day each. And I would say that just by the metrics that I've listed throughout this video, so safety, infrastructure, urban planning, these countries, these cities, at least in those countries, Antwerp and London, also provide a higher quality of life than anything I've seen in the US. And based on my experience, it's not the most extensive experience, but I have multiple reference points. I am comfortable now in saying that Europe provides a higher quality of life than America. And it all comes down to this one thing, because these are all very different countries with very different cultural customs, but there's one common denominator between all of them. And I imagine this extends even to the European countries that I haven't visited. And that is the collectivist mentality. The collectivist mentality is what informs the infrastructure. It informs the safety. It informs the urban planning, because everything is catered to the group rather than the individual. You see, the United States of America is a very individualist country. I'm not saying it's the only individualist country, but it might be the most individualist country. Rugged individualism, so to speak. That is not just an empty stereotype. It's true. In fact, I would regard myself even as an individualist in many ways, because you have to be an individualist to not only decide to be an entrepreneur and talk to a camera for a living, go against the beaten path in that regard, but
Yeah, you're
also
right.
to take your entrepreneurial venture and move it to a country that you've literally never visited, nor has anyone else in your immediate sphere ever visited either. That none of them could point out on a map, that none of them even know what language they speak in that country. You have to be an individualist to operate the way that I do. However,
His family listening to this video.
No.
Excuse me.
No, but he's right though, because he's basic collectivism is about like your family, like your social circle, everything. Individualism about like fuck y'all, I'm gonna do me, and well, that's what he did. So he is right, or he is being individualist in this case.
At the same time, having
No,
now
I was just
lived
saying
in
that I'm sure there's like one person in his family that knows where the villains is.
Oh, about the
That's
Netherlands.
why I'm saying,
Oh,
I was saying like, oh, meanwhile his family watching the video. Don't do your family like that.
in the Netherlands for 14 months, I've come to realize that collectivism and individualism are not mutually exclusive. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, collectivism, in my eyes, once meant conformity. I always thought of collectivism as this societal need to conform, to follow the beaten path, to do what everyone else does. In fact, in the Netherlands, they have this saying, do normal. And that's only part of the saying, so I might be using it out of context here, but I think that the way a lot of people perceive it is act normal, because that's the literal translation. Act normal. If you're acting normal, you fit into Dutch society. And as long as you're not going against the grain or stepping off of the beaten path, then you are welcome here. But if you're not, then you're not welcome here. You need to leave. For a while, that's how I perceived do normal as well. I thought that the collectivist mentality meant that I had to do what everyone else was doing. But over time, what I realized was that being in a collectivist society actually enables individualism. It enables a new level of individuality because you have the support system to back you up if things go wrong. The collectivist mentality gives people the means to actually take these risks and go against the beaten path because you know that you have a strong safety net to catch you if you fall. When I landed in the US, in LA,
he's right about that. That there's that support system to kind of catch you fall. Not to say there isn't here in the States, because of course every family and every circle is different, but
Mm.
I would say Americans are more like,
I don't know. It's got a little, the way it sounds like, okay, because I know that everyone is acting in the community, I can go and do whatever I want. And if I mess up, I have a community that can
yes,
land and fall on. You know what you sound like? The relative that, is me, until there's a problem. Oh my God, I need help. I can't do this by myself. I need help. I need support.
that you're
And
right
then you
about.
go to the community,
Yes.
community, you need to help me. And the community, because they're the community, they're gonna do what communities do, and which is help you. But then that's what adds stress to that community.
That you're right about. He
That
wants
he takes the good,
wants
but
to,
he don't
yeah,
want to do the other part.
that I yes, that I do see that point.
and I was on the bus going back to my car, seeing those tent encampments on the side of the road. It served as a brutal reminder that the people who step off the beaten path in the US and fall flat on their faces have nothing to break their fall.
And that's because in US a lot of people are very entrepreneurial, just like him. So because everyone is just like him, he wants to go and benefit in a country where maybe there's not too many people like him.
Fair point.
How did you understand it? Because you seem to receive it differently than I did.
Well, what I was going to say is that what I see here in the States is way more people like I never seen that. I guess there's a saying, no blood is thicker than water. So like I feel like in Europe, no matter like how fucked up your family is, at least in Lithuania, they're still gonna stay by your side. Here, I feel like in the States, people are just so quick to cut people off. Their family, their relatives don't matter. You just cut
Because
them
there's
off.
a lot to lose.
There's like they just cut them off. Like I feel like in Europe that would never happen. No matter how fucked up your family is, you will always be by their side.
And that's reflected in the government because of the social wealth resources that are available.
Yeah,
that you're prioritized.
Yeah, here it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
fucked up family member. Oh, I'm just cut. Like I see like on all these Reddit posts and everything. Oh yeah, my mother cut off my mother, cut off my father. I like, so in that sense, I can't say that every family is like that. There's families that are gonna have your bag here too. So it's not. But in general, I would say it's more common in Europe that family is gonna be there for you, whereas here it's just people just more individualistic, if you want to say selfish. I don't know. They just cut people off. Like people are very quick to cut people off here. Like, oh, red flag, cut them off. Like that. Just again goes back to individualism. I'm looking what's best for me.
Yeah.
That's how it is. So, oh, are you bad for me? I'm gonna cut you off. being part of like in I guess collectivism. You bad for me. Well, guess what? We stuck till you either of us die. So we family. That's a little different, I would say. That's how I took it.
Can I see his comments?
The video
it's gone.
switched. Yeah.
Okay. Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.